President Biden settles in for his 10-day vacation, Republican 2024 candidates, including our next guest, are barnstorming the country.
Miami Mayor Francis Suarez is looking to make his pitch to voters in Iowa today as he tries to break out of the crowded primary pack.
And he joins us now on the state of the race. Mayor, it's great to have you on the program. You and I have had a long-form conversation together on the Will Cain podcast. We spoke for about an hour. We have a shorter amount of time together today, but I'd love to hear what you think it is that distinguishes you from the other baker's dozen or so Republican candidates for president.
Well, I think we're in an era right now over the next couple of months where the voters are actually looking precisely at that. If your name is not Donald Trump, voters are looking at what's going to distinguish you, what's going to break you out. In my particular case, I have a set of qualifications based on the things that I've accomplished and based on who I am that makes me very, very different from the rest of the candidates. The first is I'm the only one that's cut a public sector budget by 20%, which is exactly what we need to cut the federal budget to balance the budget. Second, as a Republican Hispanic mayor, that's something we talked about. I think that puts me in a unique position to solve the immigration crisis for our lifetime. And third, as the son of exiles from a communist country, I understand the threat of communist China in a way that I think no other candidate does. I understand how to build an economy, having built a city that is #1 in wage growth, that has the lowest unemployment in America, and that has one of the lowest homicide rates for a city of over 400,000 in the entire country. That is how we confront China, by creating a strong economy and by confronting the national security threat that they continue to pose by putting troops potentially in the future in Cuba, and also by shipping fentanyl through our southern border, which is something that people are talking about here in Iowa.
And tell me, Mayor, what are you hearing from voters there in Iowa?
What I'm hearing is they love the authentic pitch, right? They want to get to know you. There's a saying in Iowa when they ask, what do you think about a candidate? They say, well, I don't know. I've only met him 3 times, right? So they want to get to know you. They're really doing their deep due diligence, which is something that gives me a lot of hope for this country, frankly, because they're going to shape this race. The person who emerges out of Iowa, and by the way, sometimes you win Iowa, you get a lot of momentum, but sometimes you place well in Iowa and you get a tremendous amount of momentum going into New Hampshire. And we know that the first 4 states are critical going into Super Tuesday, which will be 12 states, and that will really define the race. The race will be defined in 3 months, but really over the next 5 months is when voters are deeply getting to know us. And I think the more they get to know me, the more they like me, and the more that I have an opportunity to grow in the polls. I think August 23rd will be important because that'll obviously be the debate stage where all of us will be on there on equal footing and hopefully get close to equal time. And that's something that the Iowa GOP did a great job just a few days ago in giving people 10 minutes. They were cutting mics off. I mean, they were serious about their time restrictions.
Yeah, just like at the Oscars. They just play the music and get you off the stage. One of the things that really concerns me is in terms of foreign policy, and this is something that they're obviously the voters obviously want to hear from you about as well, is the way China has just taken over Latin America, all the ground economically that we are ceding to them. Now you have Cuba and a spy base potentially there. Have you had any of the voters in Iowa express concern about how much China has taken over the Western Hemisphere?
Yeah, this is something that I'm focusing a lot on, particularly when you consider the fact that we give them $500 billion in the form of a trade deficit, and they're stealing another $250 billion to potentially another $500 billion in IP on an annual basis. So it's worse than what you described. They're actually taking our own money and they're using it through Belt and Roads Initiative in our own hemisphere to subvert us to what I call become a boa constrictor with countries in our hemisphere. By the way, it's not anymore just Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua. Now it's Brazil, it's Colombia, it's Argentina, it's Chile, etc. So this kind of imposed poverty in our hemisphere is in part what creates the immigration pressure, because obviously people want to come to a place where they can be prosperous, where they can have prosperity for themselves and their children. And I think that's something that we have to confront, not just in terms of the threat of the border, which we know is a disaster. Biden's wave and release, and we give you a cell phone telephone policy is obviously not working and is killing, 80 to 90,000 Americans through fentanyl deaths, which is the equivalent of a 747 crashing every single day. I was in some of the cities in Iowa just in the last couple of days, and I said, look, the number of people that have died in fentanyl is almost greater than or double the population of this city that we're in right now.
Yeah.
So it's very stark for them.
You've got a legal immigration story, a green card story that is having one hell of an impact on Miami right now. That's Lionel Messi coming to Inter Miami. So the impact is huge. It's not just a sports story. I mean, Inter Miami's revenues doubling this year. The valuation could be over $1 billion already. I mean, look, the most popular, if not the most popular, the one of two in the world is now in Miami.
It's a beautiful story. And you went through some of the numbers, double the revenue, triple the valuation. I think it was about 3.5 billion people, or half the population of the world, actually saw his announcement. That's the impressions. But I think what's important in terms of a presidential race is that we've created the most dynamic city in the country. And we now have to create the most dynamic country in the world. He chose us over Saudi Arabia. He chose us over Barcelona. That was going to offer him potentially much more money. And we've done that by keeping taxes low, keeping people safe, and leaning into innovation, which is a formula for American prosperity. If we can balance our budget, if we can solve immigration as something that can benefit our country, and if we can confront China in our generation, in our lifetime, we're going to create generational prosperity for our children.
That's a really good point. He chose Miami over more money in Saudi Arabia.
That's right.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.